Hey, this is Mark Rose from Spitalfield, and you're listening to the Midwest Mixtape Podcast.
Say the things you say, and you're dreaming like you do. You know sometimes circles right around you.
Hi, and welcome to the Midwest Mixtape Podcast, live from the Barn Studio. You got the Mox, Mike, and Todd here, and we're joined online right now with a special guest. We have Mark Rose from Spitalfield. Mark, how are you, man?
Hello, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for having me, and I wish I was hanging out with y'all. It looks awesome.
Yeah. Well, our studio's here in Farmington, which is an area I think you know well. If you're from this area, if you're familiar with this scene, back in the 2000s, we had a venue called Barbarino's Pizza. It was actually a pizza place that we made into a venue. And we have a 25th anniversary show coming up in St. Louis, Spitalfield with the Forecast and Bi-Level at Off Broadway in celebration of 25 years of Barbarino's Pizza. Sunday, November 10th. Doors are at 5, shows at 6, all ages $20. We're looking forward to having you in town, man.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the show. And yeah, Farmington, Missouri. The reason I know Farmington is because of Barbarinos, and I'll say that when Farmington first appeared on an itinerary, I was not familiar. Of course, I'm familiar with St. Louis, being from Chicago. It's a stone's throw, but it was really something special. I know we're going to dive into it, but I just wanted to say Farmington holds a very special place in my music heart.
So we're obviously a small community between St. Louis and Cape Girardeau, which is a pretty big college town, but we're a small community. And, I know Joey O'Farrell was a large part and maybe the whole reason that you guys came in and played our small community. But I think, because we would have national bands come in like you guys and Fall Out Boy and Silverstein and some others, it meant so much to us, and it meant so much to the fans and the local community that these bands would come in and play our small town and community.
Yeah, and the thing is that all the bands you just mentioned, they all started, playing shows that were basements and small, churches and backyards and VFW halls and stuff like that. So I think part of the charm of Farmington and specifically Barbarinos was that it had that realness to it. It had that vibe that reminded you why a music community can be special. And when people are like excited and gathered and, all amped up for a show, it doesn't matter where you are, right? And together there, it was just so special.
For those that are too young to remember or weren't around in that time, I kind of think about the MySpace era, right? And you guys were hitting your stride right about that time. And that kind of changed things if you were in a band. All three of us were in bands at that time, and you could connect with bands in your region, in your area, and even book your own tours. Now, I know you had, some label support and probably a booking agent at that point, but how much of it was DIY at that time for you guys?
Well, a lot of it was like even when we first signed a recording contract and a publishing deal, like we were still, figuring things out and navigating in a way that meant we would kind of play anywhere to anyone for practically any amount of money and often need to find somewhere to stay and really hoping to sell enough merch to cover gas and some, fast food. Like that's where a lot of bands start. That's where we started. And, we had been a band already for about 5 years at the time that we played in Farmington. And leading up to that, we started in high school and then it was early college for us. And, playing shows and trading shows with other local bands from different regions was the way that you would build a fan base, because you'd have to go somewhere and say, hey, you guys bring out a good crowd for your home show and then we'll bring out a good crowd for our home show, and then you hope it goes well. And I feel like what Joey did at Farmington was almost give us all that experience, because he built those shows and he got the word out to those fans and to those kids, and the way that they were there showing excitement and wanting to support and buy shirts and take photos and stuff. It was really something. And I can only liken it to that early era of like DIY trading shows, self-booking. That's really what it felt like.
And Mark, so with you guys starting in 1998, and now of course it being 2024, that's what, 26-year difference. What is your approach now to music, like music industry, and how you go about playing shows? Like what do you see as the biggest difference in how you do these things?
Yeah, well, obviously a lot has changed as you'd expect over that amount of time. And, I think just like when we were young and there were, you know, elders, if you will, telling us that, that our music wasn't good or that we were doing something strange or whatever. Like now we're up here, from this other viewpoint, and now we're seeing the next wave of how things get promoted and how music gets out, right? So if our parents, were raised pretty much on the radio and jukeboxes, and then we grew up with a little bit of the radio, but then things like MySpace, and now this new generation has things like Instagram and TikTok, like everything changes and evolves, right? Nobody's really paying for music, which obviously is a slap in the face to musicians who used to count on those small but mighty fan bases to buy their music as a means to how they would, make ends meet. That said, it's a whole new world now. People can pull out the phone from their pocket and find music they otherwise would never have found. People can share playlists and singles, in a whole different way. So I've navigated the music industry this whole time. The band was inactive for a long time, but during that window of time, I co-founded a music platform called Downright, co-founded with my buddy Bob Nana. Bob is frontman of Braid and Hey Mercedes, also a Chicago guy. And we started Downright, which was a platform for musicians to create music for their fans, inspired by their fans' stories and ideas. And it was a way for artists to make money, and it still is, and a way for them to stay creative. So I was doing that, but then in the meantime, I was trying to pursue solo career, and I was getting into production work and writing and working with other artists. And now that this nostalgic boom is on and Spitalfield is back, I'm kind of, happier than ever because I'm kind of doing everything I want to do right now. And feeling so overwhelmed and blessed that the opportunity's here. And I'm trying to treat it like those opportunities won't always be here, which is probably true. I mean, the bubble will burst at some point. I just hope to still be here when it does.
Same.
Now, don't fact check me on this, guys, but if you look up in Urban Dictionary, I'm pretty sure Spitalfield is in there. If you look up road dogs, that phrase.
Yeah.
Don't fact check. Actually, go look it up. It's there, I promise.
Yeah.
So Mark, how do you guys keep the energy and momentum going through those long, long tours? Back in the day in the van, the peanut butter sandwiches, scraping together the change.
Sure.
How did you all keep it together personally and musically?
I don't know. I don't know that we did keep it together. I mean, that's the thing. I feel like we were in an era where a lot of this, personal connection that social media currently has, where you have a window into everybody's daily life, that didn't really exist. So I'd say what kept things together was the excitement and the hope for something bigger and better coming. It was competitive. It was, exciting. It was terrifying. It was crazy because a lot of bands, ourselves included, were just kids, just dropping everything and getting into a 15-passenger van and pulling a trailer dangerously across the country. And we didn't know what we were doing. And I think that when you hit the ground running like that, you learn a lot real quickly, which is why I believe that, we released Remember Right Now, which was a record we kind of had our whole lives to make and to, we had done some independent releases before that. But when I look at it now, I think, wow, like getting that, that offer to be, one step up, getting that, phone call about a label or a publisher or a booking agent, that lit the fire. And for me personally, it was all I wanted. And I was like, I'm absolutely going to hit pause on everything. And it's going to be tough to be away from friends and family and other loved ones. But, every night was a new opportunity, right? And there's people there and you want to win them over and you hope that it leads to something bigger and bigger and bigger. And now what's really nice, kind of to go to the two extremes, kind of skipping over some of the meat and potatoes in the middle there, which is a whole other story. Now what's great about this nostalgic boom is that a lot of that stuff is gone. And it's like, we're not really feeling a sense of competition or excitement or dread about like what could be next. I think that we're pretty content and happy to be playing songs together and hanging out and traveling again and trying to put on the best show we can. And the one common thread I've noticed at all these kind of like package tours that have, you know, bands from a similar era together is that everybody in that room wants to be there, you know, and that is changing everything for me, especially. Like, you know, if we do a smaller headlining show and there's, you know, 100 or so people in a small venue, when we're done playing, half of them turn around and want to come talk to us, right? About why the band matters to them or what song matters to them, or pick up, you know, a screen print or talk about their kids or whatever they want to do. And I feel like that is really special. And that's something that I don't know other scenes and other genres have. And now it's like opportunities are coming in that we have to turn down. And it was never that way before. Before it was say yes to absolutely everything you can all the time. And now we have to be selective. We have different, you know, livelihoods and personalities to manage. And, you know, it's a lot different having, you know, folks of our age and kind of our knowledge and history, you know, to be sitting in a van again, you know what I mean? And playing at venues again. Like we're a little bit wiser.
And Mark, so I remember vividly listening to Remember Right Now, like in 2003. That pretty much defined that year for me, especially that summer. So, you know, definitely as a teenager, that resonates with me. It still resonates with me now at almost 40. And what I think part of that was, if not most of it, is also the album artwork that you guys had with that.
Mm-hmm.
The photography, as I'm assuming downtown Chicago. So how do you go from someone just interested in, you know, like in playing guitar and stuff, to now inspiring, you know, people like me and giving us that nostalgic feel? Like, how did you go from that kid to where you are right now?
I think part of it, you just, you know, kind of hit on the head yourself, which was like that kind of like teenager coming of age type vibe going into that record. And I feel like, you know, we were like really, really living what you're describing, especially because we started when we were sophomores in high school and we had done, you know, years of just playing local shows and trading regional shows and trying to showcase for labels and working with our friends' labels and things like that. And when we went to college, like, you know, it was freshman year of college, like it was our goal to try to get signed and to try to make something happen. And when it did happen, it happened fast. And I think that when you get kind of, I don't know, like, you know, you get to the edge and then someone gives you a push and you have to jump. That's kind of like what happened. And we got real serious about making that record. And it was the first time working with like a true like producer, like Sean O'Keefe, who was very young at the time as well. It was an opportunity for him to work with a band that had label support. And, you know, we went all in on that thing. It was the first time we'd ever really done pre-production, the first time we'd ever really sat with, you know, ourselves and had an honest assessment of our songs. Because previously to that, it'd just be kind of like, let's jam. What do we like? Cool. Maybe we do a little tape recorder or like a single mic 4-track kind of thing, demo that, and then go to the studio, right? So now it's like everything's leveling up, including the studio, which leveled from a like nice home studio to an actual like, you know, historically beautiful special studio, which was Smart Studios in Madison, owned by Butch Vig from Garbage. And
Cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I think what kind of, I don't know. I think what it is that you and I are very similar in age. You know, I mean, I turned 41 a couple months ago. And so when we were first out there, even though, you know, the fan base was kind of that high school, early college fan base, like that was us too. Like we were like playing to our peers, really. So I feel like that maybe is part of the reason we could connect, and also part of the reason that as we grew and changed and evolved, our fans were growing, changing, and evolving too. And not everybody wants to hang on to, a scene like that forever, but the ones that did are the ones that are still around. And then there's that next wave of people after that who, just like when I was young, there were bands that I never got to see that then if they came back, I made sure I was at that show. And I feel like that's happening now, where half the crowd is, there nostalgically and are there in the present as adults. And then there's this wave of younger folks that are like, into the new bands that listen to bands like us and listen to our peers, right? So I feel like that's the reason it's connecting, and that's the reason we're still able to do this. And I don't take it for granted, because I think that, getting an offer to do something again felt cool, but now getting like steady offers and having fans re-engaged is like something beyond feeling cool. It feels kind of remarkable.
You talk about that sense of like leveling up and going to a bigger and better studio and better production. Were you guys ready for it at that time? Did you feel ready for it? Or is that a learning, is that something you learn in the process of actually doing?
I'd say we were ready for the opportunity. And I'd say that once we got there, we were overwhelmed and not ready to be there. If that makes sense. It was kind of like, we just didn't really know what it was like to really be in a studio at that level, and how well rehearsed you needed to be, and like what studio like actual production meant above and beyond, where Sean really, if there were 24 hours of workable hours, he was working 21 of them. He was falling asleep at the console. He was, setting an alarm and taking power naps in the studio couch, right? Like we were just all in on this experience. And I'd say, no, we weren't truly prepared for it. But I think what came out of it kind of holds up. Like it holds up because it definitely sounds like 2003, but it also, to me, doesn't really sound like that many other specific like bands and records from 2003. I think we're lumped into a bunch of bands and we have a bunch of peers and similar vibes, but like I think that record's production and artwork hold up. Like it's just a unique thing.
It does not sound dated. That was actually going to be one of the things I brought up. And do you agree that it sounds, current in production wise?
It's hard for me to think that, because I immediately am transported back to like the mattress on the floor in the second room of the studio. You know what I mean? Like it sounds like that to me. But I will agree with you that sonically it's got a lot to offer and it's pretty cool. Especially like, the rhythm section. Like the just driving bass, like kind of just like snarling bass sound that TJ was going for with the high mids and stuff. And the way Sean was dialing in, it really gave it a unique sound, which I'm very grateful for.
I love the way she said LA. You can hear the hum of the amp at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
That's something that you at that time probably could have taken out, but you decided to leave it in. Was that a conscious choice, or were you just going with it, or you wanted that live feel to it?
It was conscious because it wasn't intentional that it was happening. But then once we had the choice to retrack it without the buzz, we decided not to. I think two things. One, it does kind of have that raw energy to it that I dig. But also like coming right off of like absolutely loving the Sugar Cult record, Start Static, like loving that thing. And that's, that jam that starts out with like the amp being plugged in or the guitar being plugged in and it has that little buzz to it and crackle and then the song starts. I thought that was cool energy. I was digging it.
What's a good balance between staying true to your roots and venturing into some risky creative territory?
I don't know. I don't know that we did it right. I have no idea. Like I feel like we went with what we naturally wanted to do, which was the product of being in a van for 9 out of 12 months. Like when we followed up the record, we got a little more edgy and a little bit heavier and a little bit more aggressive. And I think it's because that album was kind of written more akin to our live show than it was to like the studio polish and the studio magic. And working with Ed Rose on album 2, that was just like a dream of ours, because as big fans of like the Get Up Kids and Coalesce and, these records, Casket Lottery, these records that Ed Rose has his signature, prints all over, to get to do that record with him was super cool. And it was, a different experience. Like we had to travel to that studio and stay there. And whereas when we were making Remember Right Now, we were in Madison for a little bit, but we were a stone's throw from home. So I think the creative balance, and trying to like push things forward is definitely tricky. And I think especially a lot of bands from the same cloth that we're cut from, they did kind of take a risk on album 2 to be a little bit more, I'm not going to say weird, just a little more artistic. It worked well for some and it didn't work well for others. I mean, I feel like when Stop Doing Bad Things came out, the initial response was kind of a blowback that felt negative and harsh. And then as the record cycle happened and as we toured more and stuff, we picked up new fans. And some of those older fans, I think, came around to it and they're like, we weren't ready for it when it came out because we wanted Remember Right Now Part 2, and you didn't do that. But personally, I think that Stop Doing Bad Things has even more to offer. But I would think that because I was one of the people in the creator's chair.
Now, you did mention that bass sound earlier. Now, what kind of was the decision, I guess, for you or TJ for that, I guess, more of the driving and really more heavy bass sound? You pop in Remember Right Now, and then boom, like it's there and it's heavy and it's thuddy and it works so well. And at that time, I don't think anyone else was really doing that for that kind of music either.
Yeah, and that almost all that credit has to go to TJ Minnick, who had joined the band upon the release of the EP that came before Remember Right Now, which was called the Cloak and Dagger Club. And our original bass player, Terry, had been with us all the way through that EP release. And in fact, we had an EP release show in Chicago at the Metro for the Cloak and Dagger Club, and things were picking up. We had a pretty decent local following. And at that show, Terry, the original bass player, played half the set and then handed it off to TJ, who finished the set. And it was kind of the changing of the guard. But in all honesty, Terry, and the rest of our band, we didn't realize that we were going to be signing a recording contract about 3 months later. And it makes you wonder what if Terry would have made a choice to leave the band or not had he known that. But we couldn't have known that. We had just been trying and going at it for a while. And Terry was ready to focus on film school and other things, whereas we, every weekend and whatnot, any window of time, we were trying to play shows and write songs, whereas he's like, I need to be doing these creative things. That is my future, right? So when TJ Minnick joined the band, first and foremost, TJ is originally a guitar player. And I think that he's not only a guitar player, but he's very talented and he's a noodling machine and he's all these things. And when he was playing bass, he was writing some killer bass lines, but he also was filling the space with a lot of little walks and little fill lines and all these things that were just so spot on because it was like, it was forefront enough to be noticeable, but not distracting enough to like walk all over the lyric or walk all over the catchy part of the chorus or whatever. So I feel like that is credit due to TJ because I could write root bass lines and then maybe little transitional walking lines here and there, and then he is just a machine. And then him and Sean like vibed on that. And they dialed it in with those, mild distortions and kind of high end mid range and just found a way to really make that bass pop.
You kind of talk about, the news shows and maybe the younger crowds. I'm going to speak for Todd here. He loves to take his boy to shows. My girls love to go to shows. Our co-host who couldn't be here, one of our co-hosts who couldn't be here tonight, who really wanted to be here, Keith, he loves to take his kids to shows as well. Are you seeing a lot of that? The kids that are showing up with the adults that they've heard the songs in the car and the parents won't quit playing them and they know the words as well. Do you see some of that stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's special. And I'm a dad now myself. I've got a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and, they make me, think about things so differently than I used to. And now when I just anywhere in public, really, when I see, a mom or a dad, like with their little kid, I have this different feeling about them than I did when I was younger and saw kids, or I was like, well, if I'm not related to this kid or it's not my friend's kid, I don't really care. And now I care. I care a lot. Yeah. And when it's like a fan who's someone who's been around since they were a teenager, and now they're there with their little one, or they're their young teenager or whatever, and they want to get a photo and get them a shirt and take a, and it might be their first concert or one of their first concerts. I'm just over the moon for that. I mean, that is such a special, special thing to have that kind of connection with your fans.
You talk about the Chicago thing, and I'm always interested in music regionality, I guess. Chicago just has a history of music and such a rich scene of blues and obviously rock and rap and all that. Who are some of the top Chicago acts that would be on your list if you had a Mount Rushmore of Chicago? What would it look like?
That's a great question. Well, I definitely Smashing Pumpkins.
Yes.
Talk about having a band in your backyard that is just, one of the all times. Smashing Pumpkins for sure. And then
Real quickly on that, can I
yeah.
interrupt?
Yeah,
Do you feel like they get the credit that they deserve?
I do because I think that based on the level of touring that they've done and the level of shows they can still play, I think they do get the credit they deserve. I also think that like anybody else that sticks around, you're going to go through that era where your fans start to, I don't know, be a little harsh, and where people on the outside are, questioning. And I think for them, they're in it for the long haul. They've always been in it, and they have enough great songs that I don't really try to think too much about like what they do or don't deserve, because I mean, they can headline Wrigley Field, right? So, I mean, I think they're doing okay. And I saw that when they were a headliner at Riot Fest, which was great to see them at a festival like that. It was an ocean of people, right? And they were very loud for them. So I guess, or maybe I have a different viewpoint because I'm right here in Chicago, but Billy Corgan is an odd bird, and I can't say that I love all of his creative output or all of the things he does. But I can say that, Billy Corgan and that band were game changers for Chicago, for sure.
Yeah, and maybe I'm projecting there. I think so highly of Billy Corgan and the Pumpkins in general and the songwriting, and it's easy to check out on a band and forget about their later stuff. I really enjoy some of their later catalog, and it's really, really good. And I just feel like they don't get as much love as I think they should. Like, I love Nirvana. I absolutely love Nirvana and understand, their importance and their impact, and love their songs and great songwriters and all that. But I hold the Pumpkins up there just as high almost as Nirvana. And maybe that's just me and my own personal, but I just don't feel like they get the love that they should get.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one other note that is maybe just a cool little name drop footnote fun thing is that on Remember Right Now, we have the one ballad that has all the strings in it. And the person who played strings on that is named Eric Rimschneider. Eric is who plays strings for like Tonight Tonight and songs like that for the Pumpkins. So it was pretty amazing when he came in the studio and just blew our minds.
Yeah, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
Okay. So we got Pumpkins on the list, and then
I mean, we have
right.
I mean, of course, Buddy Guy. Like, we have to give a nod to Rise Against, though, because like that's another band that was VFWs and basements, and the fact that they are such a powerhouse and bring the energy and find that balance of saying things they think are meaningful to say, but also being accessible. I mean, that's pretty amazing. And members of those bands of Rise Against were all in bands that, we grew up listening to and playing shows with. So pretty special to see them, at the level that they're at. Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of great music pretty much in every dang genre. I mean, how can you not mention early Kanye West? And I say early only because I kind of disconnect from where he's at these days, but that was something special too.
Yeah, absolutely. Those first couple records, handful of records, were phenomenal. And I'm the same way. I've kind of checked out since then, and maybe that's for other reasons, but yeah, those Chicago's just has so much history there. And I think when I think about Chicago, I obviously think about the Metro, right? So it had legendary venues too, which was like, you know, sort of. And you played the creepy crawl in St. Louis, I'm sure, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
you know, the Midwest version of CBGB's in a way, you know,
Yeah.
the toilet you didn't want to use. Right?
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Oh, and the cage.
Oh yeah, yeah.
This is the Midwest Mixtape Podcast. Joined here with Mark of Spitalfield, the 25th anniversary of Barbarino's Pizza. Spitalfield with the Forecast and Bi-Level local heroes here at Off Broadway on Sunday, November 10th. Doors are at 5, shows at 6, all ages $20. Mark, we really appreciate your time tonight. Thanks for chatting with us, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone at the show and reconnecting with some old fans and friends who were at Barbarino's back in the day, and then also just, you know, the small and supportive fan base of Spitalfield in the St. Louis area. Like, it's going to be a fun one, and I'm so stoked that Joey's doing the show. And yeah, I appreciate y'all helping spread the word and having me on your show.
Absolutely. And we actually want to cover that show. We want to try to do a concert review, maybe some photography.
For sure.
If you'd be open to having us and, you know, help get it out there a little bit more. So, yeah, we appreciate it.
No way. Can't happen. Sorry. No hookups. Just playing. No, I absolutely, drop me a line.
Cool, man.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. We'll catch you when you get into town, okay?
All right. We'll see you. Thank you.